Hello everyone, Gene Molina here from Natural Tennis Solutions. We are back to First Principles of Tennis, and we are going to discuss the snap of the wrist, and we're going to see how this is what adds topspin to what we're trying to get with our loose wrist. So you hear snap of the wrist a lot, yet I don't know if it's actually been explained. Have you seen any videos on what the snap of the wrist actually is? I don't think I have. I don't know if anybody really explains what it is. So if we go into the movements of the wrist again, so we have our extension, we have our flexion. Now we also have our, let's hope I remember this right, radial deviation and ulnar. If that's not it, then it's the opposite of what I just said, but I'm pretty sure it's radial and ulnar. So if we move our wrist in all of those pieces, so I go back, but then I go towards the ulnar, then I go towards the flexion, then I go towards the radial. That is actually the movement that the wrist will do when it's loose and it's being shaped to hit this forehand. So the shaping is what is the most important part. And if we really think about it, the shape of the ball, we got a round shape here. The shape that my wrist makes when it's moving in all of these directions is a round shape. So I can actually go around the shape of this ball with my wrist when it goes into all those movements. Goes into that extension, so I have it right here. Then I can go into my ulnar, then I can go into the flexion, and then I go into this radial. So if I'm doing that, and I have the ball here, I'm going into there, there, and then I'm getting around it. So what I'm really doing is I'm doing the shape that I want to get in order to control this ball, in order to grip this ball and hold it on my strings as long as possible. So if you remember, we're extending, and then that extension launches the racket into the ball to pull it back in and then really get some topspin on this ball. So as we pull back in, now it's getting to the point where it's going to get across it a little bit more so that we can really grip it. So if you remember, I was talking about the milliseconds that the ball stays on the strings. So if that 1 millisecond is when we're pulling across and holding it here for a millisecond, the second millisecond is when the actual extension and radial deviation start to go into the swing. So that extension back here, then it goes into that ulnar deviation to pull it in, then it goes into the flexion, then it goes into the radial, and now I have my spin. So if I do that swing the way I'm describing it with a loose wrist, then it should give me topspin. So I just brought that thing down pretty fast. That landed in the service box, and all I did was make that motion. So if I make that motion again, and I go a little higher, shanked it a little, but it came back down into the court. So as I go around, I start to feel like my swing is shaping around this ball, and the ball is doing what I want it to do. I go cross court, shape. I go down the line, shape. So I'm shaping all of this with letting my wrist go as much as I can to get this to work. If I really let this thing fly, right, really let the wrist go, then the speed and spin become insane. And the control might go away a little bit when you start really swinging, but it's been said by many coaches that you actually have to let go of control. You have to let go. You have to let go of your body. So letting the wrist go, there have been a few times that I've felt a little bit of soreness in my wrists because I've never let my wrist go this much. So it's definitely getting stretched further than usual, so it might be a little sore. But at no time in the videos previous to this did I really show a lot of speed. I wasn't ever going for speed. So speed is what can kill, right? So if I go for a extension and a flexion slowly, which is what I've been showing. I haven't been showing anything fast. This is all I'm showing, right? I'm not showing a lot of speed. Then we're okay. We shouldn't hurt ourselves. Just know your body and know what your limitations are. Some people can't get that much extension. Some people can only get that much, maybe that much. But mine is about there. Pros are even further than that. So we know what is supposed to be happening. So now how this works is you're supposed to be able to loosen up the wrist, right? So if I loosen up the wrist here and it's down in this position, if I pull with a loose wrist and try to bring it across and finish here, so I'm still thinking I want to pull across, but since I'm really letting everything go to get around, right? So the shape, I'm getting around this and I'm shaping. That ball is going to have some topspin because I'm shaping. But if you notice, I'm using my body a little more now, and the biggest piece to this becomes that before I was showing that we were doing the horizontal movement with the extension and flexion. Now we need the vertical. So the vertical part of the swing becomes the setup with the hips in a position where my back hip is actually lower than my front hip. So my back hip is lower than my front hip. What that should do is it should push my hip up so that it's actually making, since I'm extending here, right? I'm here and now I'm pushing the hip and I'm extended. This should make the actual ulnar deviation start to come around so that it will make the extension go into the radial deviation. But that's from the hip. So this is the major part. The hip is the piece that makes it work. I need to set that up with the hip. If I don't, I can still do it with my arm. I can still do it with my arm. I can still learn it with my arm. But in order to sustain it, you need to use your legs to set up in that position where the hip is a little bit, this back hip is a little bit below the front hip, and that will be the shaping of the shot. So the way the shape works is I want to shape this ball to go cross court, so I'm going to feel like I've made it go all the way cross court with my body. I don't want to use my arm. I want to use my body as much as possible. Down the line, shape, shape, and that's all we do. Shape. So that is why tennis is about positioning. If you are not in the position to put your legs in that setup to swing that way, then you have no business going for that shot. Now's the time to neutralize or defend. Even though a lot of tennis is neutralizing anyway. The game is about countering more than anything else. So you counter enough shots that either your opponent makes an error or they hit you a short ball that you can try to take advantage of, or you make an error. So that's the simple way that tennis is really explained. So we have our way of getting topspin here. I'm probably gonna, I guess, put out a few videos on how to try to feel that a little bit better, because it's pretty difficult to try to feel it on your own, but it really comes down to getting yourself to feel this here going there. So now if we go into the snap of the wrist, this is where you can't really snap the wrist. Like what I've been doing is snapping the wrist on this. I'm snapping the wrist on this shot in order to get this type of spin. So the snapping of the wrist, the way I learned it and the way I kind of teach it a little bit is I set up with a continental grip. I set up in that position and then pull, pull, pull. And I'm pulling fast. And as I pull fast, let's say I'm going to do it that direction. If I pull fast, this is extending. And then as it gets down to the bottom, the stopping motion of my arm reaching the bottom, that it can't go any further, will snap the wrist. And it will make the wrist do this. It will go into all those movements that I explained before. So it goes into all those movements that I explained before without me trying to do them. It does it on its own. So this comes out to be a pretty flat shot because I'm doing continental grip, but I get a lot of power from this with hardly anything that I'm trying to do here. So I snap, and that's all I'm doing. I'm snapping right through. And the power I get is really, really good. Actually, the first time most students try this, they do this. It launches up, because they're not used to pulling down, keeping the racket face square as they pull across the ball to snap. So that's really the key, is pulling down and keeping this pulling and going across the ball as long as possible to snap. The snap comes naturally if the wrist is loose. If it's loose, it just comes. So I can really power this thing with just that. And I'm hardly doing much, but I'm snapping, and the snap comes from pulling and letting go. And I try to finish in this position because that is what makes me feel like I let go the whole time. If you pull real fast and stop it, say here, that is probably gonna hurt. Do not stop the swing. Just pull fast and let this whole thing finish. My whole body goes all the way around and I just finish. So now, since I'm pulling down, what's happening is I'm using gravity, right? I'm using gravity to pull down and let the snap just happen. Since it's continental grip, it makes sense that the contact point is here. If I use an Eastern grip to do this, right, to snap and try to get it, it should, contact point should be a little higher, but it's just harder to learn with an Eastern grip or the semi-Western. Just try to learn it with the continental and pulling across and seeing if you can control it to go over. Oh, I got that one really low. To try to go over the net as low as possible, even if it goes into the net. Whoa, I got that one really low over the net again. That's just how much I've been practicing this, that I can somewhat control it decently over the net, but as you see, some of them still fly. Yeah, they still fly. But it's learning to snap this wrist and letting go like that. All those movements just happen on their own if the wrist is loose. So if I do my normal forehand now that I've been really practicing for a while, it just comes out to be a snap. But the snap is not down here like on this one. The snap is over here now. So as I pull and get the extension, right when it starts flexing is when the snap will happen. So that snap happens right when the flexion starts, and I'm really feeling like it's going and doing those movements and coming around. So you can almost exaggerate it and get it to go there, but I really like coming around and getting this to go, so I feel like I've actually done that. I don't know if these slow motion things have worked when I show it like this, because it's so fast, and then the the FPS on this camera I think is only 60, so it's not like it really slows anything down. I can go slow with this though, so if I'm going and I'm doing the full piece where I'm trying to get all of the extension, ulnar, flexion, and then radial, that is where the real meat and potatoes of this topspin, heavy topspin ball comes from. But the arm has to be loose. I'll try to come up with a few videos where there's a couple of ways that I kind of teach it so that you can practice it. But if this helps you kind of understand where we should be or where we should try to go, then hopefully it helps you out. I know that I've been searching for this for a long time, and I've never been able to actually loosen myself up this much to do it. I still have some match play stuff to do, but I know I've played points and things out, and it does feel pretty good. All right, so let me know what you think. I know I've been throwing out some stuff there, and you know it's riling some feathers, or ruffling some feathers. I will see you on the next one.